What software have you used before? Whether you're at home gaming through something like Steam, an application on your computer, or you're at work and working on Excel sheets, you're using software when you're using your desktop or your laptop computer. And really, software is pretty simple. All software really is it's something that allows us to do some sort of task or it does something for us. Those are really the two main use cases for software. Whether it sits in the forefront or it runs in the background, software is always running on our laptops and computers. Let's go into the different types of software categories as well as licensing. First, in terms of the software categories and types of software, we have system software, which is any sort of software that sits on our system and usually runs in the background. From there, we have application software, which is a lot more common. Some examples of these are productivity software like Office products such as Word, Excel, and more, and collaboration software like Zoom or Microsoft Teams. From there, we also have utility software and business and consumer apps. There's one distinction I wanted to make though. You can use the term software or apps. Usually when we talk about computer or desktop or laptops, we're talking about software. Usually when we're talking about software that lies on something like a tablet or a phone or another mobile device, usually we just call those apps. Now, we're also going to be covering business and consumer apps or business and consumer software. In terms of software licensing basics, these are different models for how we actually pay for software. So for example, we have freeware, which is just free software out on the internet that anyone can use free of charge. We have open source software, which has all of the code for that software out there that is accessible. And then we have commercial based software as well. These are the few different types of licensing models that you need to know about, especially commercial, because that is a paid form of licensing. And there's a bunch of different models that fall under that. But just be aware right now, software licensing is incredibly common for us to actually go out and to be able to use software once we download or purchase it. And here you can see the different types of application software types, from productivity to collaboration to utility, as well as business and consumer apps or software. Our productivity software are commonly used to help us work more efficiently, complete different tasks, and they're a type of software that we use to get things done. Productivity software is used to help us create documents, spreadsheets, presentations. For example, you can think Microsoft Word, Microsoft Sheets, or PowerPoint. It really makes tasks easier because we have a place where we can go to actually do these versus having to write them down or use something like Notepad, which isn't as efficient or organized as software. Overall, productivity software are used at school and work, in different types of business settings, and even in people's personal lives. Here's some examples of productivity software: Gmail, Excel, Word, Dropbox, ChatGPT, Notion, Google Meet. We've got a ton of other productivity software outside of just these ones, but these are by far some of the most common. Next up is collaboration software, and this is our software that allows us to work together and to communicate. Think things like Google Meet, Zoom, Microsoft Teams. These all allow us to collaborate. They allow us to meet. Some different types of task management apps nowadays are starting to become more collaboration oriented too. So for example, with Asana allows for commenting features. It allows for atting people. Same thing with Notion. Notion is very common for its capability of collaboration. Here's some more examples of some collaboration software. These also allow us sometimes to be editing things at the same time. Oftentimes these software also allow us to edit things the same time as other people. For example, in Google Docs, you could go on a Google Doc and multiple people can be editing that document at the same time. The next type of software is utility software, and these are all examples of utility software here on the screen. As you can see, these are types of software that enable our machines to do something, whether it's antivirus, which stops viruses and malware, or file management, which allows us to manage our different files, whether it's compression tools like 7-zip or uninstallers that allow us to uninstall different programs and different software. These are just examples of utility software. Overall, utility software is there to allow us to do something, either actively or doing something more in the background. For example, antivirus software runs more in the background, same thing with system monitoring, but it could be more active, like data recovery tools, which enable us to find data that has been deleted or has been lost. Next up is business apps and consumer apps. So business apps are also known as enterprise apps. These are considered software that are designed for our professional and organizational and corporate or business use. Consumer apps, on the other hand, are software for personal or everyday use. So our business apps or business software, that's usually for work-related things. Consumer apps are just things like games, things like social media apps, and things of that nature. Business apps are useful because they allow us to manage information, they allow us to do different tasks, and overall they help with our businesses. Consumer apps are useful because we can use them for communication, we can use them to upload different types of media, to download things, to go out and shop on certain places, play video games, and things of that nature. And finally, we have software licensing. Like I talked about earlier in this video, software licensing is there to give us licensing to actually use a product. It depends on what type of software you're using, but many different types of software, they give you what's known as a license so that you can actually use that software. Think of it kind of like a right to be able to have access to a copy of the software and actually use it. It depends on what type of software you're using, but some software are free to use. They're known as freeware. They can't be modified. They usually have limited to no support, and they're more for personal or basic or very, very light use. Followed by open source software. These are free to use and to modify. Next up is open source software, which is free to use and to modify. Open source allows you to actually view the code for the software. So you can modify that software in many, many different ways and actually customize it. In terms of support, open source software, it normally allows for community-based support because the community has access to the entire code that's actually running that software. It promotes more of a community feel because anyone can come in, make edits, and then share those edits with the general community. In terms of common use for open source, it's used a lot in learning, development, and customization. And really, open source can be used in any industry. Open source is not as common though with really important commercial software or really important business software, just because you're giving out that code. And if you wanted to keep it to yourself in the future, or you wanted to put some sort of patent or copyright it on it in the future or monetize it, it would be difficult because all of that code is now out there and anyone has that. Lastly, here we have commercial software, and this is when we're getting into the purchase or subscription requirement for using this type of software or to get a license to use the software. So freeware, that's our free software. Open source, that's our free, and the code is out there to actually use it however we want. Commercial software is a little bit different though. This does require us to pay some sort of money. It requires us to either do a one-time purchase or a subscription. Generally, nowadays, it's a subscription model. Also, you have to be aware with commercial software, sometimes you can buy a subscription for an entire business. So for example, I was to license our teaching here at my business at Teach Me IT or Teach Me It. We would go out and we would reach out to different types of companies, and we would either sell a per person or what's known as per seat or per license, or we would sell a product that is per the whole company. It just depends. Some companies, most companies actually do per person, per subscription, or per license. The reason why they do that is because they can get a lot of money out of that and they can actually lock you into certain types of deals for that. Now, another thing with that model is you have to understand not everyone at a company needs a license for a certain piece of software. For example, if we have a niche piece of software for everyone in the IT department to use, and the IT department only has 15 people and the company has 1,000 people, well, only 15 people need the software. So only 15 people are going to need the license. So you have to understand, usually for the most part, it's a per license basis, but sometimes certain companies or certain software or products will sell things on a per company basis and require the entire company to just purchase for that company without thinking about headcount or per license or per user or per employee, none of that. So there's two different types of pricing models for that. In addition, there's two different types of frequencies. Again, there's one-off pricing and there's subscription-based. Subscription-based could be yearly, it could be monthly. Normally it's monthly or yearly. It could also be quarterly, but normally we're looking at yearly or monthly for subscription bases. In terms of modifying commercial software, usually you're not allowed to do any major modifications. It's normally in the licensing too, in the agreements, that if you modify things, you can get your licenses revoked. And if it's a pretty big company, you're at risk of running into some sort of legal barrier if you start going in and modifying things against their policies. So even though you have a license, that doesn't mean you can go in and start modifying everything willy-nilly. Because if you start modifying things that you shouldn't be touching, you can start running into legal risks there. In terms of support, commercial software usually offers really, really good support because it costs some money, right? Now, sometimes for certain commercial software, there's a tier system for pricing. Sometimes you'll have the ultra premium edition, and then you'll have the decent edition, and then you'll have the lowest tier. There's tiers. The most expensive, middle expensive, and least expensive, that's the most common, but just keep in mind support tends to fluctuate. For example, I could tell you with something like Trello. Trello is a project management tool and software. If you buy Trello or licensing or subscription based for Trello, you're going to get access to different tiers based on the amount of money you're spending every month and how many users or people that you have on your subscription. If you have one person and you have the lowest tier, your support's probably going to be the lowest quality and you're probably going to get a reply after 3 days. If you've got 1,000 employees and you're paying a lot of money every month, you're probably going to get in the best subscription tier and you're probably going to get extremely fast support. So just keep that in mind. Common use for commercial software. It's just used in business and professional use. There are other types of software license types, but you only really need to know freeware, open source, and commercial software. Obviously, we have subscription based for more of a consumer software side of things, but that's super similar to commercial. It's really not even worth us talking about that as a separate topic. And many times people will just use freeware, open source on the consumer end anyway. And that's it for software. In this video, we covered the different types of software and we covered the different licensing models.